Welcome to the world of sex. I am your host, Dr. Kaci, and today our special guest is Adam. Hey, Adam, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Where to start? I am a stand-up comedian
Hmm.
and the host of a podcast called Dating Kind of Sucks, that focuses on dating, sex, and relationships. And in addition to that, I'm a photographer, and I have a TikTok that I do a lot of content about misogyny and toxic masculinity as well. That's a little bit about me.
So, when you saw my post, what was it that made you want to be a part of the show?
Well, a big part of what I do as well is try to reduce the stigma of talking about sex. It shouldn't be you shouldn't be shameful. Like I hate the concept of walk of shame. I think it's a terrible concept.
Right.
It should be I don't know what you want to call it, but the stride of pride or something like that. And so like I work actually a lot of my content is about trying to make people feel comfortable about sex and understand that it's everybody has it and you shouldn't be ashamed of it and we should be able to talk freely and openly about it and so I like the idea of trying to share that even further.
Do you really think that everybody is having sex?
I mean, no, there's some people that aren't, and they probably shouldn't, and then that's fine.
Okay, so how was your first sexual experience? Like when did you start having sex and what was the most surprising thing that you learned in your entrance to sex?
Oh, it was terrible. My first experience was terrible. I went through so when I started I went to a private Christian school when I was young, and got a little indoctrinated in the idea of Christianity. And so I was like, oh, well, I can't have sex until marriage. And then went to high school and still kind of felt that way. Had a couple girlfriends and we'd fool around a little bit, nothing beyond like second base,
Mhm,
honestly.
mhm, mhm.
And then I kind of had an awakening and I went to college and I was like, no, I want to fuck. But I was going through my own shit and I was kind of not, I wasn't someone who would want to fuck me at 18 as a
Mhm.
teen. I don't know. I don't think I was a person that anybody would want to. And so I didn't actually in college, wasn't really dating. I was kind of a loner trying to figure out my own stuff and didn't have sex and then went to law school and met actually the person who I ended up marrying. Met we started dating and I had sex with her. It was the first time I had sex and it was awful. It lasted 30 seconds at most,
Why
and
did you say it was awful?
it was like that was it right there. I was it just wasn't
It
really a
wasn't what you expected.
it wasn't what I expected. I think also a big part of it. I mean, I had built it up in my head because I was at that point I was 21 I was 21 when I had sex for the first time. And I also didn't realize until much later, after my divorce and everything like that, that I was having bad sex. I just didn't. My ex-wife was just we were not really passionately compatible when it came to sex.
Did
So
y'all
I had
wait to have sex when y'all got married?
no. I mean, we had sex when we were dating. She had
Okay.
already had a couple partners before me, and but it was just I just think I was bad at it, and I think she wasn't really much better. And I think
Right.
the two of us were just kind of fumbling around, and we never really had the passion. And I didn't actually have good sex until I had an affair 10 years later. And
Okay, so wait a minute. Let's stop there for a
Yep,
second.
yep.
Because what made the sex good? Like, do you think it was the affair? Like, explain to me because the way you said it was like, wait a minute, this new woman had me open.
I had a best friend and who actually worked for me, and we would talk very openly about everything. And she was
Mhm.
married as well, and she was always saying, you guys seem happy, but I feel like there's something weird in your marriage. And at one point we were just talking, and I was like, well, other than sex, and she's like, what do you mean? And so I explained it to her, and she's like, that's not what sex should be like. Like we were having sex in my marriage maybe once every I don't know, maybe every 6 weeks, maybe every 2 months. And, even when newly married, we were like that as well. Because I just, neither of us kind of enjoyed it. And but we always came up with excuses. Let's just, let's push it off or whatever. So she was like, no. And she would like, and so my best friend would tell me about sex and about her sex life and about, and about what it should be like. And we were very honest with each other about everything. And then we ended up kind of falling for each other. And the first time that we ended up having sex was like incredible. Like I felt a connection with her. She was very communicative, and like and actually passionate and like on all these things. And I think it was something I was like, oh, this is what
This
this is
is
what
what it's
sex is
supposed
supposed
to
to
be
this is
like.
what it's supposed to be like. And I was 31, I think, at that point, and the first time that I actually had good sex in my life, and I was like, oh, I can't stay married, like not just because I had an affair and I felt like shit like for that, but because if I didn't had never had that passion with my ex-wife, like why I'm never going to be able to build that with her.
Right.
So like, and I can't go back to that. Like I need to have someone that I can actually have that type of relationship with. So yeah, then I continued. Then I got divorced and went on a trampage.
So
You
how much
know,
sex did you have after your divorce? And was it
so
all
much.
good after that?
It wasn't all good, but it was like it started to, it was I learned a lot in the first the first probably 2 years. I like I said, I call it a trampage because it was I mean it was a lot. I was just like, oh, this is I want to do this all the time, and so I learned a lot, and most of it was pretty good. I've always been pretty partner centric. And so it wasn't always about, because I mean, I'm a guy, it takes a stiff breeze to get me off, it
Right.
takes, 30 seconds and I'm done. So like, what's the point of when it's good like that? But I'd rather focus on the partner. So I learned a lot about oral and about pleasuring my partner and getting them off before I started having sex. And it started actually and get to my point.
So this is going to be a little off topic, but how did you go from law school to comedian?
I've always wanted to be a lawyer. I always saw myself as a lawyer. I went to law school, worked for some lawyers, and realized I did not want to be a lawyer in any way whatsoever. I liked the education I got. I like that
Hmm.
I have a doctorate from it. It taught me a lot about language, and so I'm a writer as well. And so it taught me how to write well. And then after my divorce, actually, I went on a date with someone. We went to the comedy club, and they had a sign there for a comedy class. And my date was like, your writing is very funny and I could really see your writing translate to the stage. You should give it a shot sometime. So I went and tried it and I really loved it. So I started, performing. I took a little break with the pandemic and everything, and I'm reworking my material. But for 10 years, I toured and headlined comedy clubs and casinos and places like that.
Well, that is amazing because okay, so little tidbit. I have been pursuing a lawsuit and I have been doing it pro se. And law is so, it has such a great dynamic,
Hmm.
but it's really just you being able to write a better statement than the other person and being able to convince whoever is reading it. And
That's it.
that was the most
Yep.
surprising thing that I learned in the process.
It's that, and knowing the right words to use,
Hmm.
and how to read everything in such a way that you can interpret it for your benefit. But yeah,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah. And then using it because if even if you even if the example or the evidence is there, if you don't say the right thing, then they
yeah,
won't even look at it like it means
exactly.
anything. And that is crazy. But back to the subject at hand. So, um you said that you started having sex afterwards. And so did you end up like hooking up with your best friend longer after that? Like passionate sex is really about a connection. So once you establish a friendship, then the passion is more likely to be involved.
Yeah, so when we started, I mean, we had a full blown affair until her husband found out about it, and we turned into a whole thing. And we obviously stopped at that point.
Right.
And then I decided to get divorced, and she actually decided to stay with her husband. They worked things out, and slowly our friendship kind of had to separate because of
Yeah.
that.
Right,
But
right.
but I like in that period of time, I like there were so many things. It started to shift actually, not just my like maybe physical ability in sex, but also who I was as a person. I started to
Hmm.
like realize that maybe I'd been like so uptight about things for so long that I needed to start, maybe just being a little more open about things. Like, for example, one time we were together and I was going down on her and came up and she had started her period while I was going down on her.
Like
And
wild.
well, like she didn't realize she was about to, and she had, yeah, basically it started like I came up and I had blood on my beard basically, just a little bit, but and she was like, oh yeah, I didn't realize I was about to start that. She didn't really notice because we were like we were having lots of sex, and I think she just didn't think about it at that point. And I realized, oh, I don't. I don't mind that. Like it was something that if you'd asked me, earlier, would you do this? I'd be like, of course I would never do that. That's ridiculous.
Right.
It's disgusting.
So you like ketchup on your sandwiches.
Yeah, basically.
Nice
Yeah.
to know.
Yeah.
So what is your wildest fantasy?
I don't know that I have any real wild fantasies that I haven't already done.
Next question. What have you already done?
Well, I think part of exploring, realizing that that who I was when I was married was not the person I wanted to be, and then I started to realize that I had been uptight about things, and I need to maybe let loose of control a little bit and try to see who I was. And I think part of that was exploring sexuality as well, and
Mhm,
realizing that I've done a lot of research on it myself too, but that the sexuality is a spectrum, that it is not a you're gay or you're straight or you're bi.
mhm,
It's
mhm,
a
mhm,
it's a shades of gray. And most
mhm.
people, I would say at least 90% of people, if they were honest with themselves and weren't worried about the stigma from society, would be somewhere in the middle. They're
Right.
not. I think very few people are 100% straight or 100% gay. And I think that, so I started to try to explore that. What do I like and what intrigues me and things like that. And so over time, realized that I was pan,
Mhm,
and that even though I'm pansexual, I'm pretty heteroromantic. But started to just kind of explore and was like, well, I'm a single man. I can do whatever I want. And so
mhm,
just why I'm trying to get rid of the idea of shame or guilt. So just
mhm.
try everything.
So how did you come to, okay, earlier you said you was into religion, of course, like most people are growing up, and you went to a Christian school. So how did you um gravitate more towards the sexual freedom? Because that's a very big variation technically.
It is. I think that as soon as I went to, like, as I was going through high school, I started to I started questioning things,
Hmm.
and I've always been very anti-tradition
Hmm.
and whenever someone says, "Oh, we just do it that way because that's how we do it," I rebel against that aggressively. I'm like, "Well, then that's stupid, and I'm not going to do that."
Right.
And so I started to feel that way in high school, and then went away to college, and it was the first time living alone. And living off by myself and having the freedom to really kind of explore. It's also when the internet was first coming around, and so I spent hours on the internet, and learned, like, just started reading stuff that I'd never been exposed to, and I think that's where I really started to doubt things. I also started one of the first porn websites on the internet ever had, which is a little story if you want me to tell
Please. I mean, because my next question now is what is your favorite type of porn?
that. So there were these things called news groups back on
Hmm.
the internet back then, and you would go on like alt.binaries.pictures.nude.celebrities or whatever, and
Right.
everywhere there used to be people discussing it. But if you were in the binaries folders, those were people just posting images, but you couldn't download full images on the internet at that point. You
Hmm.
had to
Hmm.
download them in these text files. Then you had to that were all encoded, and then you had to encode them into a JPEG,
Right.
and they were usually 100 parts per one. So I spent
Hmm.
literally hours in the computer labs downloading naked celebrity photos
Right.
and then collecting them and actually compiling them. So I had actual images and had floppy disks, like the little square disks that I
Yeah,
had
yeah,
sitting.
yeah, yeah. I'm old
And I was
enough to
learning.
know what a floppy disk is.
Okay, you don't look it, so I didn't.
Thank you.
And then I learned HTML in a class that I was taking, and so created a website on our school server that basically listed all of the naked celebrity
Wait,
photos.
stop. On the school server?
Well, that's the only place I knew how to create it. We didn't have
Okay.
any other place. There was
I mean, early back then, yeah, I get
yeah,
that.
early back then there was no other options, and created a website that was just a page of a list of all of the images that I had, with one sample that you could download, and then my school address, my mailbox, and you could send $2 cash because there's no PayPal, there was no
Right, right,
Venmo back
right.
then. There's no credit card processing. $2 cash to
Grassroots.
to my mail exactly to my mailbox, with a piece of paper saying your email address and which photos you wanted. $2 per image. And I remember I did this, set it all up, submitted it to Yahoo because that was the only real search engine. There was a Yahoo and Alta Vista, and got like an actual email back from a Yahoo employee saying, "Oh, hi Adam, your website's been added to our directory." Like that's how old I was when I was doing that. Like the internet was.
Wow.
I remember my parents came for parents weekend and I was giving them a tour and I went to my student mailbox and I opened the mail while I was with them to check the mail and just 100 envelopes poured out. And they were like, "What is this?" And I explained to them, I told them it was like a pen pal program, but I
Mhm.
started opening the envelopes and it's like $2 cash and all AOL email addresses and just like they want the naked picture of, this person or this person. and
Mhm, mhm.
and I think I made something like $1,200 in like a week, and it actually overloaded the school server. And they had a big meeting with me that they had to sit down with the dean of students, the dean of the business school, and all this stuff. And they said that even though, like, due to my
Like then they
moral
didn't have
turpitude.
those type of rules and stuff because it was so fresh.
Well, they were so fresh, but they were also like, yeah, they didn't know what to do. They were like, well, due to the moral turpitude of what you've done, we should expel you. However, we're impressed with your business acumen. So as long
Right.
as you promise to take the website down and not do that again, you can stay at the school. So I promised to take the website down and took it down. And to this day, I still wonder if I had kept the site up and just dropped out of school, I probably would be a trillionaire, to be honest.
Probably would be because you was groundbreaking at
I
that
mean,
point.
yeah, this was 1994, 1995, and I had a porn website. But yeah, so
Wow, that story by itself is like
yeah.
because listen, you was the original Pornhub. Because right now, I think that Twitter is the wild, wild west of porn because it's mostly authentic people just uploading their sexual acts and enjoying themselves versus it being like a scripted type of thing. So, what is your favorite porn?
Well, and I would say Twitter and Reddit. I think Reddit is still a good source for like people being
I've never been on Reddit like that. Not for that. Because
um,
Twitter is just more convenient. But
yeah,
I'll look
yeah.
into it.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of, so I despise scripted porn. Like I feel
Mhm.
like it's always felt fake to me, even when I was younger and would find the occasional video. Like I would watch it when I was younger because I didn't have a lot of choice.
Right. Hello.
The first webcam person ever. Her name is. Can you hear me? Did I lose you?
Yeah, it just paused. It
Oh,
froze for a second.
okay, okay. The first webcam ever was her name was Jenny Cam, and it was the first. She like kept her cam on 24/7, and so it wasn't always naked. It was her sometimes just doing her work and blah blah blah. But I remember like I was really drawn to that like kind of voyeuristic type of like watching someone's life, and that's kind of translated to amateur porn, like people who do their own thing, people who shoot
Hmm.
their own stuff, people who make their own thing. But I will say that, and this is me just being egotistical, is that my favorite kind of porn is the stuff that I shoot with partners, and then like play back when I'm alone later, like that stuff,
No,
because it
I feel that. That's not egotistical because I would love to be in a situation where I felt like I could trust somebody enough to shoot a video and then play it back. Like, I want to get married and let's make videos so we can watch them later. I mean, we can might even be able to watch them with some friends, but oh, it just depends on the friends, you know. Like
right.
I that's where my mindset is. So no ego there.
Okay, well, yeah, but that's that. I mean, that's honestly my favorite stuff, is because then it's like it's really reliving memories, but I've got video of it, and it's
Hmm,
that was a
hmm.
fun time. I remember that. So, but it's all amateur stuff is what I like, and it's relatively, I mean, vanilla stuff. I'm not, but I mean, I watch everything from to straight to trans to gay, like everything around the whole spectrum is enjoyable to me, depending on the person. It's a
On the
really
person, yeah, and the energy
person,
definitely.
exactly, the energy and the personality that they have.
I um I kind of watch a little bit of everything myself. I think I I'm definitely more on the straight end, but I definitely have considered myself more of if there was a term that I had to use, I would be a pansexual because I think that a sexy person is a sexy person. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter if they are whatever they decide to be because I have seen trans women and trans men, and both of them are a little bit alluring to me. But chicks with dicks is like, wow, like wow, like whoa, and because it'd be some big dicks and they be getting big tits, and I'd be like, I can't just imagine because I think um kind of within nature, everybody kind of have a thing for tits. I mean, that's just
I
like
mean, yeah, they're fun.
we've
They're
all
just to
been fed
enjoy.
on tits before,
Yeah.
and we all had that. But and then they're alluring. But to have like I like dick. I like sucking dick. I like looking at dick. Like I almost only watch lesbian porn because if I watch dick too much, I've been celibate for 7 years, then I am going to go and find some dick. And it's gonna be a random dick versus me actually putting some thought behind it. So I kind of limit it. But that's what helped me be celibate because I don't watch things that I know I would go and pursue. I know I'm never gonna go and ask a woman like, "Hey, baby, let's go out." You know what I'm saying? That's
Right, right.
really not my style. Like, I might try to befriend a woman that may seem open, but I'm never going to approach in that manner. So it's safe for me.
Right, right.
So, do you have a kink?
I think probably the voyeurism, exhibitionism.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
because like I said, I enjoy recording when I'm with partners, and I enjoy watching it. I enjoy sharing with friends who, are into it and are obviously with their with permission and consent and all of that.
Right, 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 right.
I have an OnlyFans that I don't really post on much, but it's just like I'm like, hey, if I decide I want to post something on there, I can.
So, what do
And
you post on your OnlyFans?
well, sometimes it's just me. Sometimes it's
Mm-hmm.
that, but usually if I hook up with somebody that's okay with it, then I'll post a video, or I usually post it, usually sell the clip or whatever. But
So, how
you know,
much have you made on OnlyFans before?
I mean, I haven't. I've had it so I started it because I was actually helping a sex worker friend manage hers, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm a photographer, so I was taking all of her photos and I was posting them when she wasn't in the mood. And I was just trying to, and I wanted to understand the ins and outs of OnlyFans, so I started one just for that. And then I was okay, like I occasionally just post, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna
Right.
jerk off, might as well record it and put it on, put it up there. And I'd say I probably made like maybe $300 or $400, but because I don't really do it that,
Right.
I'm not committed to it.
And so tell me about a one night stand experience that you've had.
Uh, I had well one I haven't had too many where I didn't end up still talking to the person afterwards, but there's still a one night stand. But I had one. I went to a meetup for my podcast actually when I was in Orlando, and then we all went to the strip club afterwards. Like a 15 of us went to the strip club afterwards, and then one of our listeners decided it was like very flirty and wanted to come back to my place, and I had already kind of hung out with her, so like we knew each other. And we went back and we had sex, and it was and she called me daddy without it. And then afterwards she's like, I should have asked your permission if that was okay. And I was like, I'm fine with it. But
Right.
like it was that was the part I remember most, was that we were just like in bed, and she was saying that pretty copiously. And but yeah, it was just it was fun. I always like back in my place, I had a Keurig, so I'd always make coffee for anybody that stayed, that stayed. And I was very nice about it. And I never had a one night stand with the intention of like I don't want to see them again. It just
Mm-hmm.
sometimes just
It
we
happened.
didn't work out again. Yeah, yeah. Because I actually like having a connection with somebody when I have sex. Like I feel like it makes it so much better.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I haven't had two, maybe about one or two in my whole like sex life. I think I lost my virginity about 15 or 16, probably about 15. And I haven't had too many one night stands. Normally guys come back. So, what have you learned about yourself throughout your sexual experience?
Let's see. I have learned that I'm a relatively A type personality, that I'm pretty dominant in my daily life. I'm very assertive, very authoritative, just in the everything I do, and the way that I speak is very authoritative. And so in bed, I actually would like to maybe give up some of that authority and just kind
Hmm.
of be a little more submissive, but I find that even when I try, I'm not really very good at it. So I found that I'm pretty dominant when I'm with women. I'm pretty much very very dominant in that sense. I'm kind of a switch when I'm with trans women,
Hmm.
and then I'm actually very much a bottom when I'm with guys.
So
So
you actually like explore with all
oh
people.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I've had I'd say I've hooked up with a few trans girls in the last, I mean, maybe five, six, seven, somewhere in that range. And then occasionally hook up with a random guy or random woman. So
So, are those experiences different?
I would say they're very different. Yeah. Because with I would say with guys, it tends to just be kind of like let's just get somebody to come. I think
Mhm,
is it.
mhm, mhm, mhm,
That's
mhm.
basically it. Whether it's just going to be a quick little oral meetup or is it going to be like a reaction to have sex? And then with trans girls, it is different. It's interesting, and I don't understand. I think it might be the estrogen that they're on or
Mhm, mhm.
something, but there is a difference between being with a woman, being with someone who's trans, and being with a man. Like there's a difference in just the I don't know, and it's hard to describe, but even like the taste and smell and just like pheromones feel
Mhm,
different
mhm, mhm.
with all three.
Okay.
And so it's been very interesting, but I would say that yeah, um, I have learned that yeah, it is different. There are different types of experiences. Women, like with women, I actually and this is my internal something, but with women, I want to spend time with them, with women,
Mhm.
both like cis women and trans women. Like I want to like, hey, let's hang out, let's watch a movie, let's go get some food, let's go to a bar, let's get a drink, let's go to the hot tub, whatever. And then with like guys, it's just like, hey, let's just fuck and then get the fuck out.
Yeah. Which makes sense, if that is your thing. Um, Depending on what the situation is. So does all vagina feel the same? Like what's the difference? Like it help me understand from a man perspective.
With different vaginas
Mhm,
from
mhm,
women.
mhm, mhm.
I mean, I think that everything's different, and just like dicks are all different.
Right.
And I think so. Overall, I haven't found much difference in the only time that I found it different is if someone has maybe like a chemical imbalance or something like that. So
Mhm,
there's a bit of a scent or a bit of a taste or something like that. Maybe they're just on the end of maybe something they had or whatever. But
mhm, mhm.
beyond that, I haven't really found much difference. Like they're obviously they all look different and there's all
Right.
difference in labia and things like that. But like I haven't found any difference in
Like wetness or dryness, because I hear guys talk about women being dry, but I think that that's more about the way the guy turns them on than the
I was to
woman
say, yeah,
actually being dry.
that's the guy not understanding that she is not into him in any way.
Right,
Like,
right, right.
yeah, yeah. Because I've never really had a problem with that. I've had experiences with varying wetness, but it's never been like too dry to have
To
sex.
feel good.
Yeah, I've never really had that issue, and I've never had, there have been some issues where someone was looser or tighter, and and also depending on how drunk we both were too, like that always
Right.
affects as
Because
well.
that makes a difference.
Oh, it does. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because I've had sex somewhere where like I just kept falling out, like I just kept slipping out, just because it was just the way we were having sex, and we were both drunk, and she was maybe a little bit looser than I was, And then I've had sex where we have to like really work it to get in, and then once we're
Hmm.
in, it's fantastic. But
Right.
I think a lot of guys also try to have porn sex, and we just actually just had a listener on our podcast who called in because he was she was calling she had a partner as a bigger guy, and he just kept falling out, and she didn't understand why. And
Hi, I'm Casey, Dr. Casey. Welcome to Speaking Freedom. We are happy to have you, and we hope that we are able to help you in every way possible. Have a good evening.
I was like, because he's trying to have porn sex, he's trying to watch his dick go in and out, and he's trying to pull all the way out and then put it
And
all in.
yeah, yeah. And it takes a skill to do that, but also the perfect size dick to be able to pull out enough to be able to go back
Right.
in. And it's a lot of mechanics that go with that. You just can't do
Exactly. And
that.
if you're just an average guy with an average sized dick too,
Hmm,
your
hmm.
best thing is once you get it in to use that and grind, and like you don't have to keep pulling. You're not in a porn, so stop doing that.
But
So
listen, long strokes do something to the folks, like that the long
right.
strokes are definitely um arousing, but you definitely do have to know how to manage your side so you don't keep slipping out. So I definitely understand what you mean.
Exactly. Yeah, whatever works for you, yeah, is the important thing.
So what is your preferred relationship dynamic?
In what way?
Are you open to poly? How do you feel, like what is your preference when with relationship styles? You want to be with a woman, you want to be with a man, you want to be like open in a relationship.
I don't know. I don't think that poly's really for me. I think that right now, I'm single, so I mean, essentially poly because I can do whatever the fuck I
Right,
want.
right,
I'm
right.
not committed to anybody. I think that if I found someone who was a partner at home, because that's the big thing is sex is, when you, especially as you look at it, sex is probably 20% of what an actual good relationship is.
Hmm.
It's important, but it's not everything. So like I think that I would want someone that we were committed, and then maybe we might bring somebody in occasionally if we were bored or if we decided to spice it up or whatever. But for the most part, I think it'd be a mostly monogamous, but maybe with the occasional venture out with permission and consent.
So how do you feel about poly in general?
I think that one-on-one relationships are insanely complicated to two people's personalities, and every time you add another person into that, it just adds exponential complications. And so and I think that there are plenty of terrible monogamous relationships, and I think there's plenty of terrible polyamorous relationships. I think just poly does take more effort because it requires like everybody to have the excellent communication skills and no insecurities and no jealousy, and so I think it just makes it more difficult. But I think it makes sense. Like it makes sense to and I've been the second in a poly like before where and like we just she's married and then she comes over when we want to spend time together and we'll spend a night, we'll go out on a date, she'll stay the night and everything, and then she leaves. And for me it's great because like it's almost just like having just like a friend with benefit that I don't
Hmm.
have to do any of the heavy lifting.
Right.
But every time I've had that, and it's happened twice now, I've found that they've started to have additional feelings and then they've had to pull back because they've realized that compared to their partner, I'm like the 2.0 version of their partner. It happens all
Hmm.
the time. It's really weird. And then it's like, then I feel bad that I've somehow negatively affected the relationship, and maybe they shouldn't be married to this person in the first place. And so,
It's really
yeah,
so that means it's really not you. It's
I,
them and their discuss because when you think about marriage, and sex, a lot of times people rush into sex and then they also rush into marriage. Even if you don't have sex, you can still rush into marriage without really knowing a person, their
oh, yeah,
romantic style, their love style, how they plan to parent and function, day to day. And especially when you think about the religious rules of not living together beforehand and all of that, because really that's how you really see who you're gonna be with.
that's true. Yeah.
So, just in general, I definitely understand like what you mean, but relationships are, like you said, very complex. I am in a lot of poly groups and bisexual groups, and I really see a little bit of everything, although I'm very celibate. Um, it's interesting because I see more women that are looking for poly style romantic relationships. Some don't even want their husband involved.
Yeah.
And it is always intriguing because society makes you believe that it's the men that are seeking these things. And what I've learned is that most time it's not, it's the woman. And it just takes a while for those relationships to be open enough with each other to come to that point and being able to really communicate how they want to be loved. And that is the toughest part in any relationship because, again, if you're rushing in and you're not really talking about the love styles, then it makes it more complicated.
Well, and the stories that I love are the men who push their wives to be like, oh, I think we should be open because the man has like his eyes on the secretary or on someone he's been talking to, and so she's like, okay, but we're going to be completely open, like and he's like, that's fine because he doesn't really love his wife anymore, or he doesn't really think that she's attractive, or like he's just kind of lost attraction to her. So then he goes out, and then of course whoever he's with realizes that he's kind of garbage pretty quickly,
Hmm. Hmm.
like emotional connections and physical connections, and she's having a blast, and then he tries to roll it back. He's like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore, and she's like, no, sorry, this is fantastic, I'm glad we did this, and I love those types of stories. because I'm like, I think so many women get married because they get tricked into thinking that the guy that they're with is great, and then he
Hmm.
turns into basically being in one of their children. Basically he wants her to cook for him and do laundry and wipe his ass and all that stuff, and then she gets so sick of having another child, but she doesn't want to get divorced, and so they it allows her the options to try to at least find connections outside of the marriage.
Yeah, it is very interesting to say the least. As a person that has been married and divorced, I think one of the things that ends up being a problem is that there's not a lot of connection. So the sex dwindles down because before I got married, I didn't have sex at all. We was like I would the first time he seen my legs, I was like, "Oh my gosh, you're seeing my legs!" Like that's where I was. But once we had sex, I think we had sex probably about every day for probably the first 45 days or so, to the point where I was like, "Yeah, damn, nigga, like, please just stop. Okay, can we get a break in here? Like, don't wear it out. Like, you're doing too much." But over the years, I think waiting to have sex until you get till we got married really probably hindered us more than it helped us because it allowed for us to be okay with not having sex further
Yeah,
on down the line. And then sometimes it's not a loss of attraction or anything like that. It's just really you're learning each other, you're going through stuff, and then you don't make time for that. So if you're not being romantic like during the daytime, then when it's time for sex, and now it feels like a chore, maybe to you and her, but mostly to her because you're not kissing, you're not touching, you're not doing anything to lead up to sex without wanting sex. Like I always tell people, smack her on the ass, kiss her and not expect anything. Like lead her on to the point to where she wants some more engagement. You're like, nah, not right now. To make her want it so that the sex is now, it's like she's yearning for it. She might try you versus waiting for you to try her. And a lot of times marriages lack that. One of the reasons why I actually started talking about sex and wanted to pursue becoming a sex coach was because when I was married, especially at the end, it was like we wasn't having sex. And then I realized that he was watching porn and I was watching porn, but we wasn't watching porn together. Like it was
right.
so many little things that could have helped the relationship stay bonded. But as you begin to grow separate and now you're keeping secrets, it really makes the relationship suffer so much. And then I was like, well, if I wasn't having sex, then there's other people that's not having sex. So then I started giving sex tips. Like you should be excited to have sex. Matter of fact, this is how you should feel once you have sex with your partner. Like if you're not feeling like this, and y'all need to talk a little bit more, y'all need to kick it, relax, go, enjoy each other's company so that when it's time for sex, it is like you said, passionate and enjoyable, and you're feeling like you're embracing somebody that really connects with your soul. But a lot of people really struggle with that, and I realized that once I got divorced.
I think I saw a study that said that 80% of women who have one night stands with men don't have an orgasm, and 60% of married or partnered women don't have orgasms regularly.
A lot of
And I
people be faking it.
Well, right, which I would say to any women listening, don't fake it, because all you're doing is making him think he has game, and he thinks he's a badass, and you're wasting your time. You're much better to being like, you know what, I'm not going to get there, and it's okay sometimes, but like let him know that you're disappointed, if you're disappointed in that. But I
I mean,
think
now you listen, wait. We don't have to tell him that you're disappointed
no,
as much as we want you to say, "Hey, babe, let's try this." But
right.
also, very important, learn how to move your vagina in the way that pleases you so that you're throwing the pussy back. And because when you throw it back, it makes it more pleasurable. Now you are learning how to hit your spots. And he doesn't necessarily have no. We want to teach him. Yeah, oh, baby, this is it right here. When you do that, like when I do like that, like that little turn to the side, just a little bit, just turn your hips a little bit. But you got to teach them at the same time learning how to make sure that you're pleasured in the matter. I always say, like, people say, well, what if you wait to have sex and then it's bad sex? I can never have bad sex because I know how to throw it back to the point to where I'm going to enjoy myself regardless. He ain't even got to enjoy himself. I'm going to have fun.
Well, that's good. That's how it should be.
But that's not the consensus for most people. A lot of women just lay there, and a lot of men are expecting the missionary position. I actually had somebody on the show a couple of weeks ago that stated that he didn't like for a woman to move. He just wanted to just sit right there. Just yeah, right, right.
Yeah, that's was his name Jeffrey Dahmer? No, I mean
No,
that's
no, no.
that's a little creepy actually. You don't want someone to move.
I mean that he just was like I don't know because the same person he was kind of like sometimes he has a problem building relationships with people. Like they have sex and then it's like they don't, it's nothing. So I was like, it's one or two things. One, your sex is not as good as you think, or you need to allow a woman to want more from you. Like give her just a little bit. Don't give her all. If you got 5 moves, give her 2. And then give her a little bit so she can be like, wait a minute. And then when she come back for the second time, now you lay on the third one, but you keep 2 so that she know, like, wait a minute, he didn't do this last time. Now he doing something different. And that makes you more desirable because now she doesn't know what to expect when it comes to sex in the bedroom.
And be vocal. I think so many men are quiet when they have sex, and I think it's important for men to just be vocal. Tell her how you're feeling. Tell her how you're enjoying it. Tell her that it feels good. Like just be very vocal because that's communication. And
Mm-hmm.
that makes a big difference. I've had women that like we're like it was great, and then as soon as I started talking, it got even better because like then she really
She
knew I was
knows.
like, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, that feels good, and so like it enhances the
Mm-hmm.
sex significantly.
Right. I definitely agree with that. So, have you ever been to a swingers club or sex parties?
I have not. It's something I probably go to, but it doesn't really like. I don't know. It'd be fun to like observe, but I'm not really into that in that degree.
Right. Now, listen, I went to my first play party is what they call it last year and I did not know I was going. I say I didn't know because I just thought I was going to a pool party. Didn't know the verbiage, didn't know the language, no nothing. So I get there and there's a guy in the pool with no clothes on. And I'm sitting here like, why is he got no clothes on? But nobody else is tripping. So I can't trip. Like I can't be like, what is going on? And everybody else is cool because now I'm the oddball. So I'm just playing it cool. And then later on that night, somebody was like, afterwards, there's gonna be a little play party after. And I'm thinking, like, play party? Like, what are you talking about? He's like, oh, you didn't know? And I'm thinking, like, I didn't walk in this house about 4, 5 times. I've been drinking, so I didn't had to go to the bathroom. And I noticed beds in 2 of the rooms, but it just
Just
I don't know where my man was because I guess if you don't know that it's going on, then you not like it's no big deal because
yeah.
I totally didn't notice. And then after the guy told me about the play party, after like once the party is over, everybody goes in the house, they turn in their phones, and it's a really protected environment. Definitely no means no. In this particular party, it was a lot of people kind of just standing around watching or whatever. But when I thought about it later, it was like no other seats in the whole house. It was just beds everywhere. It was like one couch. It was a
Right, right.
bed in the front room, 2 beds in both bedrooms. It was like, how the hell did I not notice that it was beds just everywhere? But it was not a bad experience. I've been to a couple since then. I don't necessarily participate normally because I leave before the fun really gets like if I
Right.
get there at 10 o'clock, I'm not staying there till 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. That's a long ass
That's a
time to
late.
be in this
That's too
place. Yeah.
late.
So normally things don't get to popping or start transitioning to the play until like about 12 or 1. Well, shit, I'm ready to go home now. So I always miss all of that, but I'm more of a voyeur, which means that I just like to watch basically because I am one of those people that I need some type of connection for sex to be relevant or even, alluring to me. I am not one of those random sex people. So it's kind of weird to be in those environments because you know that everybody's looking like who sizing you up, who are you,
Right, right.
hump on. But it has not been a negative or bad experience. Different parties elicit different activities. So I went to one party that was more like a spiritual type of thing. They was in there making people come without touching them. I was like, wait a minute now. I was like, what is this going on? Like, I mean, it was like, oh, like, oh, like it was some real deal. Like, I want to say voodoo magic, but it really wasn't
Right.
like that. I don't want to make it seem like it was a bad. It was really a nice experience to see. The first party that I went to, versus this particular party where it was more spiritual than it
Huh.
was about sex.
Interesting.
So it may be something that, at least as a voyeur, you might like or enjoy.
I think I would go if I had a partner like that was also kind of a voyeur, so we could go sit in the corner and just watch, and maybe get off with a little bit with each other while watching. Like that might be
Right.
fun. But a single man too, usually aren't invited to those. A lot of
Well,
those.
so the way that it was explained to me for single men is that you go, and it's just that you can't be like leery
Right.
in those environments, which is kind of hard. But
Right.
normally, in the other, so I've been to probably about five or so, and some of them there's just it's really like a party where you're just hanging out at first, and then so it be single women there also, and it's probably not as awkward as you would think, but I understand totally.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and just but I know that it's usually they usually single men are usually the least, like that's the lowest group of people that you want attending these things. Like they want couples, they want women, and then yes, the single guys
See,
can kind of
but the couples be wanting some wild ass shit sometimes. Like it
like
was at the first one, it was a single guy that was kind of leering around, and they was like, well, he couldn't sit in the rooms because it was kind of awkward. But then he definitely got in on the magic, like soon after. Like I was like, wait a minute, he didn't tapped on in. All right now.
that's great.
So, what has been the most difficult challenge in your sex life?
Most difficult challenge in my sex life. I don't, you know, I don't know that I've had one. I mean, I feel like because when I've thought about things, I've tried them, and when I've decided to do something, I've done it. And it's just like I can do whatever I want. So like, I really don't think that I've had a challenge that I'm like, oh, this is something that I just like it's a pain or whatever. I mean, I will say that um obviously having anal is obviously that's a challenge in the sense that it just requires more effort, requires being, yeah, just the prep work
You got to
involved,
relax a lot. You have to be very comfortable.
relax, clean, you got to make sure you're
Hmm.
nice and clean, all of that. And
Okay,
that's
pause.
kind of a
How
pain
do
in the
you
ass.
clean up for anal?
Well, usually an enema. So you use that, and then I mean that helps quite a bit. And then with that, you can always sometimes in my use a toy for a little bit just to try to get like kind of make sure that everything feels good, and then you have to make sure that obviously that you're not holding on or you're not blocked up at all too. That's a big part.
Hmm.
The enema helps quite a bit.
Right. Man, I never I've had anal before. I actually enjoy it. So I know why when men get it, they are like turned out by it because it's an amazing feeling. But I never considered the prep work that it takes in order for it to be a success.
Yeah, you just because you just don't want it. Yeah, you don't want it. I feel like if you care about the person you're with or you're worried about it, you don't want it to be like a mess for them either. So it's really a lot of work too.
You're like when you say a mess,
Well, I
like
mean,
have,
you gotta.
have you ever seen like what type of mess? Explain so that our listeners understand as well as myself because I'm like, okay, like would shit come out?
I mean, yeah, that is definitely a risk. Like if you're something where you're like if you haven't emptied your bowels of
Well,
recently and everything like that, then you have to worry about that. And even with that, if you're not a high fiber, always eating fruits and vegetables type of person, because
oh, I can imagine it stink because when your poop been up there for a little while and you've been constipated, it have a little different smell to it.
well, there's probably a smell too, but it's just when you're a fruit and vegetable high fiber type person, your colon's pretty clean. Like everything's free.
Mhm,
You,
mhm,
you,
mhm.
you could, but if you're a fast food eating type person, then your diet's not great, and so it's gonna your bowel movements aren't as great either.
Right.
So I mean you want to stay clean because I mean if you've got it depends on the size too, but if you've got a toy if you've got a toy or a dick that's longer than say 5 inches
Hmm.
and you haven't done prep work, chances are you're going to get something on it. And that, I mean, that's something you have to risk, but I think, and especially if there's a lot of motion and there's a lot of, if it's someone going to town and like, back and forth quite a bit, then the chances are that there is going to be some, there could be some,
And even I could imagine it kind of working itself down just because you're open.
right.
And it when you say that, this is going to be kind of awkward, but it reminds me of when I heard Puff Daddy call French Montana his favorite shit stain, and when he said it, it was kind of weird to me, but I was like, shit stain, like why would he be a shit stain? But I was like, okay, duly noted.
But yeah, so yeah, it's a lot of prep work. It's something like, especially if you're really kind of fastidious about it, then you want to make sure, and it can take, you just, it can be a couple hours of prep work sometimes. So
So it's like so those that deal in anal sex often they have to keep a good diet basically in order to make sure that it's enjoyable.
yeah, or basically, like, I think like 24 hours before, they're gonna take a laxative, and they're gonna basically drink lots of water and just give themselves, like, a full day to kind of like let their body naturally kind of
Cleanse.
cleanse out of the, yeah.
So what advice would you give to listeners if they needed to hear advice from you in regards to sex, sexuality and sexual expression? What advice would you give?
Well, I would say that chances are that you are a little bit gay, and that you shouldn't worry about it, and it doesn't
Right.
mean anything, and that you shouldn't be ashamed of it. You shouldn't get defensive about it. You should take the time to explore it. And that I think that if more men sucked a dick occasionally, that it would probably solve most of the problems in the world, because we get rid of all the toxic masculinity, because they'd realize there was no real big deal with it. And I think that I really think that you should just take the time to explore. And if there's questions you have, you should research them. You shouldn't put it back. Don't shame yourself into hating yourself, because
Mm-hmm.
that internal hatred boils. It becomes toxicity. It becomes attacks on everybody else, because that's
Mm-hmm.
projection. That's what half of misogyny is
Yes.
projection from men who are hating themselves and don't know what to do with that, because they're not emotionally intelligent enough to deal with it. So I would say, yeah, just explore, have fun. Yeah, just play with things that you don't know. If you're a guy, your G spot is in your butt, and so get a toy and explore it, and you hit that pro when you have a prostate orgasm and your knees don't work and you can't walk, and then you'll actually understand what a woman has when she has an
When
actual
she has, yeah,
orgasm.
the leg shaking, yeah, I
Yeah,
love it.
exactly. Yeah, and when you have that happen to you, for the first time, it is incredible, and it blows everything else out of the water. And it's one of those things that every man should experience. But if you're worried about, if you won't even wash your ass because you're worried about touching it because you're worried they're gay, then you're missing out on a whole world of fun.
I definitely agree that you should explore your sexuality, especially if you're open to it. And a lot of times, the men that are most, oh no, 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 is because they get aroused. Like you, it's natural to get aroused by something that, or someone who is sexy, by any type of sexual action. So I definitely agree with you there. Now, as we wrap up, is there any questions that you have for me?
I'd like to know how you managed to stay celibate for as long as you have. That intrigues me.
Oh my God. I am a classic avoider when it comes to mental health. I'm a war veteran. When I was 17, my mom tried to kill me. And so um the way that not just me, even my mom and my grandmother process um mental instability is through avoidance. So, in order for me to not want to have sex or not be tempted, because sex is like that's my weakness. When the reason why I didn't have sex before I got married is because I explained to my ex-husband, like, if you try me before it's time to get married, then I'm going to leave you. So he performed well until he was
Right.
able to, get the prize. And so when I got divorced, was dating a guy. We were having sex on a regular basis, and then when I decided to not have sex with him anymore, he kind of was like, "Well, bitch, you're a hoe, and fuck you, and hope you die, bitch." And I was like, "Whoa, slow
Wow.
down there." So, and then, but before that, my ex husband threw a rock in my back window. He was like very type of violent type, and then, but before that, I've had guys to try to heal me up, like, "Why you ain't?" And I'd be like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa." So after the last guy, I was kind of like, if it's me that's making guys act like this, then maybe I need to chill out for a while until I find somebody I want to have sex with. And then it became more like a challenge. Somebody was like, well, let's see how long you can go. And I was like, well, okay. Normally, what I do is after being married, me and my husband was together for 5 years. And afterwards, I was like, I got about 5 years for anybody that I date. So I gave the other guy that I was messing with about 3.5. And then once it started getting shaky, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and bow out of this. But I wanted to give myself the same experience that I was giving other people. So I just kind of isolated myself from sexual interest. So if a guy would talk to me, I'd be like, oh, hey, I gotta go. Like he'd be like, excuse me, oh no, I gotta, and it would be like every time I would run into my car and not like really run, but I would duck off. And it's really because I like sex. So in order for me to not have sex, I can't get close to somebody because if I start liking you, I'm gonna want to have sex with you. So it has been really a matter of not putting myself in situations where I know I would want to have sex because I after a while it just became like I don't know, like right now I want to have sex. I'm in the stage that okay, we've done this long enough. This is over. But now the dilemma is finding a person that I feel like is worthy
Yeah.
or worth the time because after you've not had sex for this long, you just don't give it to just any random Joe Blow because this shit is gonna be amazing because I ain't had sex in a while and I enjoy
Right.
sex.
Right.
So all of that buildup is going to smack somebody in the face. And now I got to make sure I smack the right person in the face. So it makes it a lot more difficult. But going to these sex parties and swinger parties is very interesting because it's helping me to get more open to the ideal of being sexually intimate again. It's 7 years is a very long time. I when I was in church and people used to be like, "Yeah, I've been celibate for da da da," and I'd be like, "Oh, stop lying! You ain't been celibate that long." I now know that they probably were not lying because if you take yourself out of those situations, it's really kind of easy. And then you're not thinking about it now. I am not like I don't come or I don't get aroused. Like I still pleasure myself. I am just not willing to risk, especially being in Atlanta. STDs is up, everything is up, people is crazy. You niggas is killing people because of, you know what I'm saying? Like, you just don't know what you're going to get. So it
Right.
makes it a little bit harder for me. And I have two cousins that literally are in jail for shooting and violating guys for being with women. And so all of those things play on my psyche a little bit as far as making sure that when I be with somebody, it's somebody that I feel like at least they have my best interest at heart at minimum. So that's
Right.
how I've been celibate for so long. But
Wow.
believe me, I am done. It's just a matter of me finding someone that I don't want to say worthy, but somebody that one intrigues.
Worthy is reasonable. Yeah, worthy.
Yeah, but you gotta intrigue my mind at this point. Like it's not like when I was younger, you probably could have just pulled up yo, 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 and I would have been like, oh yeah. But as a 40-year-old, you can't do it. It was like calling me over, telling me you got some weed for me to smoke. Okay, Nick, I got my own weed. Like I keep weed myself. So why would I need you? Like, so the things that would intrigue me when I was young minded and younger, it is not as intrigue. It's not like, oh yeah, I'm about to come over and smoke weed with you. I'm gonna just chill and relax. No, I'm not. I got some weed. So what else you got to offer? Because that ain't enough. And so it really has become a lot more difficult. I'm gonna be honest with
I think when it finally happens, we're gonna hear it around the world. We're gonna hear
you.
you.
It's
It's
definitely
gonna
going to be a vibration that's going to set off in the world. Let me tell you something. When I was having sex before, I was definitely a lot more creative. I wrote more. I was just more a lot of everything. I can't even put it in
right,
words
right,
but I definitely miss it and I'm looking forward to it. But I wanted at this point, I kind of wanted to be special just a tad bit. Like it can't be random. I mean, because if it's random, then I'm gonna be pissed off if it's random and bad. Like it can't be
yeah.
random and then be bad. So it's a roll of the dice. I don't know. What do you suggest? How do I stop this? Because
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's fascinating.
How long have you ever gone without sex after you started having sex?
Um, Maybe a year, just because I was on the road for a while, and so
Hmm.
it was hard. It was just it wasn't worth it to try to get on Tinder and try to find somebody to have sex with. But yeah, I'd say about probably about a year.
Yeah, this
So
is the longest I've ever been. I remember like when I was younger, guys would be like, "Yeah, she said she was celibate, but she sure didn't last long." And I was like, "Cause I was weak to it, but now I'm not as weak as I used to be."
yeah, huh, interesting.
So, how can people find you if they wanted to look you up and hear your comedy?
Well, I don't have any of my comedy online because I'm rewriting my entire stuff. I decided after the pandemic, so I don't have comedy online. But you can find me on the podcast is called Dating Kinda Sucks, available on all podcast platforms. I'm on TikTok at Adam Avitable. My last name is so it's Adam and then my last name, which is Avitable. And I'm also on Twitter at Avitable.
Well, I am so happy that you were on the show. It was a great conversation. I learned a lot, especially about when I'm ready to have sex again and I want to do anal. I know I need to take enema now because before it was just like, the run of the mill. Okay, if you want to do it, then let's do it. But I had no understanding of the prep work that should be taken to make sure that it stays clean.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's been great. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Well, until next time, everyone, see you later. If you've enjoyed this video, like, share, subscribe, and turn on your notifications. New episode every Friday.